When we were putting together the agenda for the day, one of the things we wanted to do was really have some conversation in the afternoon. So we've all had lunch, and so we thought, you know, if we saved the economics part for the morning and not for right after lunch, right? But we wanted to just have some conversation, talk about experiences, and so we're going to start off first with Cory and Cory. We planned that, but we're going to have them talk about their experience as barley producers and what they've seen, and then after them we're going to talk to the maltsters, and we're going to let the maltsters talk about their experiences and what they're looking for. So I've got just a couple questions for these guys to get them started, but this is a great opportunity for those of you in the crowd who want to talk to folks who have grown barley or actively growing barley, have some in the ground right now, right? So we'll get started if Cory Vineyard, if you'll start, just reiterate where your farm is and kind of talk about your how long you've been growing barley.
Yeah, so my name is Cory Vineyard. I'm about 30 minutes south of Knoxville, Tennessee, in Loudoun County, and I've been growing barley for 4 years. And as I mentioned earlier, that's due to me trying to start a malt house for the past 4 years, and almost through, getting ready to do some test batches hopefully. But that has allowed me 4 years of testing out the alternative markets on barley here in Tennessee. And yeah, so 4 years I know is not a lot of years compared to some of the guys in the room and how long they've been growing small grains. But I'm a crop advisor / agronomist for the co-op back in East Tennessee. That's my day job, and so just coming from the agronomic background point of view.
How many acres do you have?
I've got about 40 in barley.
And has that been consistent all 4 years, about 40 acres?
Yes.
Okay. Cory Willis?
Well, I'm Cory Willis. I am, VP of Willis Farms. It's located in Coffee County, a little bit in Grundy County, and also a little bit in Franklin County. We farm roughly 5,000 acres under management of barley. We've got about 300 this year, which is double what we did last year. We made a big jump. We've also been growing for about 4 years. We got into it because we also thought we might want to start a malt house. I homebrew as a hobby, very into beer. Thought, why not? Let's give it a shot. Turns out, malt houses are very expensive. Some can probably attest to that. But in the process of researching that, we figured let's grow some barley and see if it'll actually grow here. We did really well with it. We grew it exactly like we'd ever did wheat. Nothing different whatsoever because we were used to growing milling grade wheat. So one thing led to another. We've added acres every year, and now we're up to about 300. We sell to both Carolina and a little bit to Riverbend right now.
One thing I always like to point out, so when we talk, internally we talk about farm to tap stuff, right? We talk about our barley growers. Well, these are my two that I go to. And one of the things I think is interesting to point out is Cory Willis is a part of a multi-generational, very large family farm. It's used to 5,000 acres under control. And Cory is kind of his one-man show over there in Greenback, and so differences. So we got a lot from Tyson this morning from the agronomy perspective. And so as he was talking, I'm sure there were thoughts popping off in your brain about yes, maybe, no, I don't know. I guess if you want to start, we'll start with you, Cory, this time. If you want to start with the varieties you've chosen, how you got there, and then kind of talk about the agronomy of it and what you've seen.
Yep. We started out with Violetta, it's an LCS variety, and that was purely on Aaron's recommendation because he had growers in central North Carolina that had some success with that. And there's not a lot of resources available for malt barley information. 4 years ago was not that long ago, but there was nothing even like this at all 4 years ago. I had a very hard time finding any actual pertinent information to this area. There's a lot of Michigan, Canada, stuff like that, but the South's a little different. So sourcing seed was a little bit of an issue. You couldn't find Violetta, so you had to go with Calypso, which was a kind of sister variety. So we flip-flop between the two, and we've sort of settled on Calypso now, basically because we can get it We have a little more years of experience, again, 4 total, so it's not saying a lot, with growing that variety. It stands a little better for harvest, and then it yields the same, dawn numbers are about the same. Really, really very, very similar agronomically to Violetta. Do you like how we grow it and everything?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Great. Again, kind of goes against everything we talked about earlier, but we plant right around like early November, which supposedly is late, whatever. We follow corn every year and no-till. We don't chop up the stalks. We just no-till it in as if it was wheat. We do use 2 shots of fungicide, 1 at flag leaf with like a cheap something, and then we come back with Moravis Ace at heading to protect it up until harvest. Nitrogen, we'll push it. We use about a unit of nitrogen per bushel of yield, essentially. So we're like 100, 110, something like that total. 30 of that being in the spring. Then we come back with liquid over top, and well, here in like 3 or 4 weeks, probably we'll hit it. Otherwise, it's like wheat for us, which that was the whole goal. Unless it was going to be like wheat, it was going to be too much of a stretch because corn and beans pay the bills, feeding chickens pays the bills. Barley's like a side project. So unless it can fit in there and not disrupt our main core crops, it wasn't going to be a viable crop for us. So that's why we had to make it fit wheat. And so far it's done. We may have been lucky for 4 years. Your mileage may vary, but so far for us, we've had success doing it that way.
Good.
So his operation, mine's obviously kind of a little bit different. I have limited acres just in total that I can rotate stuff around. So I have tried to keep my barley behind soybeans. I've planted rye and stuff before and actually took it to grain behind the corn, and just the dawn levels on that stuff was outrageous behind the corn, but that was with rye, not the new varieties like Calypso and such. And so from then on I tried to always keep it behind soybeans, but that also means that I don't get it in the ground October 15th either. Like this year, I didn't get it in the ground until November 29th. So, it's kind of you're taking some risks there. What Tyson was talking about with, especially this year with that big Arctic blast we had come down. A lot of the small grains in our area look like you went in there with some gramoxone and just tried to kill them. I have done Calypso the past 3 years. This year I'm actually trying the new Avalon variety to see how it is, and that is because my supplier couldn't get Calypso. And he said I can get Avalon though, and that's kind of against the norm. Everybody could usually get Calypso and not get Avalon. So I'm blessed to try that variety out this year. And basically what, going along with what Tyson said, the nitrogen application at Green Up is usually when I try to put it on there, and I use about 75 to 80 units, like he was talking about. We're on a little bit more poorer ground over in East Tennessee compared to some of the ground around here. We've been, me and another guy that's trying barley in the area, about 80 bushels is about what we've been hitting, which that's pretty good for our area. As far as planting rate and stuff, right there, about 150 pounds per acre is what we've been in, three bushels an acre, just to keep it simple. We're also no-till, so we're drilling it in, right there at that 1.5 inch mark. And the past 3 years and this year, we've had pretty good luck on the winter freezes. Now these spring freezes is nothing to joke about. That is what'll get you. That's what'll make or break you. On fungicide, we've been doing Moravis Ace right there at the heading. This past year we tried the new Spherix fungicide from BASF, and it did great as well. Dawn levels, following the beans and doing the fungicide at the right time, parts per million was less than 0.03, I think, is the highest we had. So it's been pretty good at keeping the dawn levels real low. And that's one of the protein, moisture, and then dawn. If your dawn's above 1, you're out. I mean, unless I mean, you could try to take it to a distillery, I guess, and try to see if they'll take it above 1, but breweries, they definitely need it below 1 part per million on your DON levels. And it depends on the year with everything else, what your disease pressure is, what your rainfall is. It's hard to get 2 weeks right there in June to harvest this stuff. When it's ready, you need to get it out. And some of the challenges, you know, me being a smaller farmer, not having the storage capabilities, that's, you know, drying capabilities and everything else. When you're drying this stuff, you don't need to put heat on it. You just need to run the fans. Because if you do get it too hot in the bin, it will set back your germination. Trying to think, oh, chemicals. Excuse me. So if you're doing soybeans, say you're doing, you know, Zidua, it's a big group 15 that everybody uses in soybeans. If you plant, or if you spray that when you plant your soybeans in June, or I'm sorry, in April, May time, you can't plant barley until 11 months after you spray that. So make sure that the crops beforehand, you're keeping an eye on your chemicals and on your plant back intervals. That's another thing I've ran into.
One question I have, and then I really want to see if we get some other questions and conversation. So you guys have been doing it for about 4 years. Have you seen others outside of today's meeting, but others interested, calling you up, asking you about it? You know, have you seen it within your kind of network more of an interest in growing barley?
Yes, I have, just due to more so, you know, the malt house presence, being online and stuff. I get emails from people all across the state saying, hey, I'm interested in this. Most of the guys are not actual small grain producers right now. They kind of are coming into it from, you know, the brewing and distilling side, and hey, I'm interested in this. I want to use, like I'm starting a full farm to table just right here, type location. They want to grow it themselves and do it. But I mean, I've talked with Cory for a couple of years now, and I think there is more interest now. I mean, people are saying, you know, hey, we're doing mill grade wheat. You know, there's not much difference to doing human consumption barley. I mean, you got to kind of meet the same parameters. So there is that correlation there, and price and everything. I think y'all were talking about price and everything. As far as I can tell, it follows the wheat market, at least here. I mean, that's the only thing we have to gauge it by.
Is that what most of the contracts are based on, whatever the price of wheat is?
It varies. I mean, who you're probably going to end up selling to is sitting right here. I mean, barley's useless unless it goes to a malt house. So, like, the brewer's important because the malt house needs to make what the brewer wants, but you're selling to a malt house, so you are a little bit of a price taker in that respect, but you do have a premium product. So you have to just work with them. Some base it a little more off the wheat market. Sometimes, you know, it depends on their local market, because what you may be selling it somewhere who sells it a little farther, a little closer, you know, so you maybe can gain some of that locality premium where you're, you know, buying local and all that crap, or not crap in a bad way.
Don't take.
Yeah. But sometimes you may sell, because I think some, like our Tennessee 2-rows going to like Charleston, right?
Some is, yeah. Most of it goes back in Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah, it's kind of cool that these other states are, you know, oh, hey, let's see what's going on in Tennessee, and then buy some of that.
Yeah, but like, they may not care as much about, you know, the fact that it comes from Tennessee, because it needs to stay local.
Well, they care about other qualities of it. You
Yeah.
know, like they care about the terroir that Tennessee soil imparts.
Exactly,
As opposed to,
What is your success rate as far as what you're producing, being able to sell and market to the malt house?
Us is 100% over 4 years.
So you haven't had any kind of trouble with them declining or anything?
No, our DON levels, which, you know, maybe because we go after corn, but they're still within the okay range, but they're higher than 0.03. They're up, you know, like 0.7, 0.9, stuff like that. But still, it's under that level. And sometimes that can be addressed with a little cleaning and stuff. I'm sure Malthouse will speak to that later. But yeah, we've been able to sell everything that we've grown.
What kind of storage premium are you seeing for tying up your beans?
We started out with not much barley, so nothing else is in the bin at that time. So we try to just get it hauled as soon as we can, which, like this year, we hauled it all, this is before we needed the bin to put corn and beans in.
Oh, so you're
Yeah, it's gone.
harvesting June and you're getting cleaned out in all the August?
Yeah, yeah, because it goes through a little bit of a dormancy, so it can't be malted for a little bit, but the sooner you can get it away, then the less risk you have, because weevils do like it a lot.
Are you treating the seed as it goes in the bin with insecticide?
Yeah, we use just like an insecto, the diatomaceous earth. We spray our bin itself.
Are you
as
spraying
a predator.
the actual grain with anything?
We don't. We thought about doing store side or
They
something.
frown on that.
Hmm?
They frown on the actual grain flow, what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
We
That's what we're
do.
doing with our wheat that we're storing, and we're putting it actually on the grain.
As far as I know, this is just what I've heard. People do spraying bins mouth on or something like that, and then diatomaceous earth is another one, but actually spraying it on the grain flow can, cause somebody to reject it.
Yeah.
I don't mean to jump in, but, he mentioned he's only got 2 buyers, but we've only got 2 sellers. So we really, I mean, and so
He may not want us to become a seller.
So, but when you're in that situation, that you just gotta be able to trust each other and
Yeah.
communicate, and, I mean, I try to call Cory every once in a while just to ask how his day's going, so that later on I can call him and convey bad news or good news, and but just when you have that situation where, y'all are it for each other, it's important to, just establish trust and keep communication open.
Mhm.
I mean, it's really beneficial for us to make sure that you get paid what you need to be paid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a win all the way around.
Well,
Because otherwise, you guys don't have to plan it.
We're having to meet grade standards with milling wheat, and even with selling corn, dog food plant, Purina, or Tennessee Farmers Co-op. Moxon's been the problem this year. Some years it's aflatoxin. It's not, this is not a new concept of there being things that happen. You have to change the plan.
I'm dying to speak to that one, it's my turn. But yeah,
So how many more acres are you gonna grow?
Honestly, for us, we're probably topped out because of the harvest window. Since it's all gonna be ready, then like this year, for example, we had like 2 days to harvest it all. We had 150 acres, we made that happen. If we have 2 days this year, some might get rained on, and then odds are we will not meet quality. At the very least, it's gonna go way darker, and that's important. If it goes too dark, the color just gets dark, then the options of how it can be malted are limited. So, my understanding, again, malt houses, they would much prefer it be as bright as possible. So not to mention it, starts growing.
What
mold.
moisture are you harvesting at?
We're like 14 or so.
In the area to get it down to 13.5.
Yeah. And you could probably push that a little bit, but again, if you're trying to harvest it quickly,
I'd say for long-term storage, you need it below 12.
Mhm.
You're competing against the really other barleys on the planet right now too, whenever you get to the brew house, and I think that's,
Mhm.
become more the norm too. And if these guys look in the bag, Matt from Tennessee Brew Works better see something that looks very similar to what he saw coming from Europe or Canada. If he doesn't, it's not gonna help craft malting at all.
Although we sell the barley, so we don't technically sell to brewers. It's still very important for me to build relationships with all these brewers. So Henry will tell me where he's selling to, and one, I like doing it, but I'll go and I'll talk to the brewers, introduce myself, and then you build a little bit of a relationship there, and then you explain some of what we're talking about here, the risks involved, and how many stages it goes through. You help tell the story of the barley, even though you don't see any profits from the sale of the malt directly. You're still growing the barley that gets turned into malt, and it's more of a partnership than a lot of other things that we do on our operation anyway.
I mean, the story's more authentic coming from you than it is from me.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm gonna tell you, what you need to hear to get it into your brew house.
Mhm.
So it's really important that you guys are on the ground.
I'll interject just a little bit here. One of the things that we talked about with the idea of Farm to Tap and this initiative was to helping build those relationships and, you know, kind of identifying that because it's not like we have a well thought out supply chain, right, in Tennessee for this. And so there is going to have to be that level of trust with the malt house and the farmer. And so that's a big aspect of Farm to Tap that we're hoping to do is events like this where we can make those connections, hopefully build relationships to make it a deeper meeting than just a transaction, right? It kind of has to be in the current state we're in right now from a supply chain perspective.
I think there's a question.
I realize, being from Idaho, things are a lot different here. You have the rain and the humidity to deal with where we go. And we have irrigation to deal with as well. It doesn't seem like, I've only seen about 3 center pivots since I've been here. So there's a big difference. But I was wondering, there are some varieties that we grow up there that they are trending down to the south. I wondered if you'd heard of any of them. Some of the big yielders, and that's the reason I say this, is one thing they tell me is there's the 3 Y's, yield, and yield, and one is the farmer has to make a good, big enough yield to make money. The malting, the malters have to make, enough money to cover their yield, as well as the brewers and distillers. But there's like Voyager, which we've grown for like 20 years. Have you ever heard that?
Mm-hmm.
And Conrad, which is faded out, but M69 is a big one. But the biggest one now is Odyssey, which has a low GN, and which is beneficial to the distillers, and they like that. I didn't know if you tried any of those. They're upwards like 150, 160 bushel per acre.
Under irrigation.
Under irrigation, yeah.
Okay.
For all those winter varieties.
Certainly probably drop here, but there's just a chance of increasing your yield.
Mm-hmm. I'd heard of Odyssey and Voyager, just kind of preliminary research, but again, when I was doing all this research, there were no agents that had any familiarity with it. So initially, I kind of shied away from things that looked like they worked well other places, just because, one of those, there's enough risk already there, so I was trying to at least go with something I kind of knew.
Yeah, well, if you can eliminate some of that risk, like.
Yeah, I didn't realize they were yielding that well either.
The other question I had was, do you have a contract price? I mean, every year I've grown barley, I've had a contract price. And the last few years, what they've done is, from now till like before planting time, probably it might be 1st of March or something, but they will send us out an email saying the price of barley is this much. And then I think last year it ended up being $15 a hundred, which would be $7.50 bushel. But,
Okay.
and it changes every week, and like you said, it's tied to wheat, and as well as a few other things. But you have that contract before you start, so you know what you're going to make if you produce the yield.
That's like what Aaron was talking about. We'll talk prior to, so basically, in the past, we got 2 options here, but they also have limited options. So you work with them to know, hey, what do you think? How much of this can you sell? What's the trend line? Because I don't want to grow 300 acres if they were thinking they could only sell 160 of it, and then I've got to get with Riverbend and see if can they sell the other 100. So you do some of that planning ahead of time, and in that conversation, there's a price, there's a little bit of negotiation, who covers freight, that kind of stuff, because we are a little farther away than, it's not like hauling it 45 minutes down the road to Tyson or something.
Our barley is all contracted with just a few, like Budweiser, Great Western, what's the Spanish one? Modelo, ain't contracted with any of those.
I think, I don't know how Aaron does it, I know how I do it, and it's much less arbitrary than what you're getting from AB InBev and those guys. This is more, it's a relationship,
Okay.
and
there's.
you need each other too much for it to be just here's the piece of paper that I'm sending you in March.
I understand.
Yeah, and then, granted, the last couple of years as well, production costs have gone up in varying levels across various, areas, depending on how you're set up. So that'll come into play when we talk about pricing. It's like, well, for me to make this work, I'm gonna have to have X to keep the same profit margin, and then it's like, well, can they do that? So there's, like anything, there's a back and forth, there's a little bit of negotiation, but it's not so much an official, here's, like you're saying, here's a piece of paper, here's what it is on this state or this state. It's pretty much, here's what it is for your crop, and we're gonna buy it. So far, it's been basically all of it, because there's not that many buyers, so we pretty much go to one or two places.
This is perfect. Keep throwing questions at him. I think this is excellent.
So we heard 150 pounds an acre earlier.
Not when it's November 29th and you just gotta get it in the ground.
I mean, if it's certified seed, it probably is, whatever spec they got made out for certified seed.
Well, I've had certified seed anywhere from 10 to 15,000 seeds per pound, and my growers in North Carolina will attack me if I try to get them to plant 15,000 seed per pound seed. They want the 10,000 seed per pound because they think that plumper seed means plumper, plumper barley. So
Well,
anyway, I was just curious about that.
My way of thinking is doing 150 pounds is I'm getting it in so late. There's going to be some wear and kill. We do the same thing in soybeans and everything. If we're planting later, plant population goes up to kind of help get it going faster. I mean, you'll have when you plant early, you're planting on tillers. You're planting on that till formation. When you're planting late, you ain't going to have the time to establish tillers, so you're going to have to establish it from the main stems.
I got you.
So you don't normally do 150 pounds if you get it.
If you're doing it early, you can go down, but 150 pounds is a pretty good place if you're planting late to kind of give you some insurance on establishing the main stems.
Also, if you're using a grain drill, you're going to try to do 150 pounds, but grain drills are notorious.
Grain drills are a controlled spill. I mean,
That's all it is.
and so, you just got to kind of do the best that you can.
And we end up pretty much 3 bushels an acre, 150 pounds. I will look at the tag that comes on the seed and try to do the math to be like, okay, if it's 15,000 seeds per pound, I need to do X amount of pounds to hit 150, hit 1.5 million. Depending on planting day, it might bump that to 1.7 million, it might go to 1.3. Depends on germination rate, because you want the final stand of plants to be correct. So you change all the other factors to hit that number more than the other way around. But again, then we put in a grain drill, and my 85-year-old granddad runs it, and there we go. We got a ton of seed left at the end. Well, okay, we'll go put it over there now. So,
Super efficient.
Oh yeah, you try your best, but there's again, farming in general is a controlled spill basically. So, you're trying your best, but there's always variables that are out of your control.
Is there anything you've learned that you wish you knew day one, or do you think you have had a pretty good handle on it from day one?
Well, I've benefited greatly from being a multi-generational farm that has grown milling wheat, and then we also grew some feed barley way back, like the 60s, 70s. So I'm coming from a different place where I'm getting to benefit from the experience of my family members, who seem to be pretty good at what they do. So like I said, we went with it just like wheat. So it has worked out for us. I don't know how much of that is because of our own doing, or how much of that is from just straight up luck, because we happened to not get frost for 4 years, but the next 10 is going to be just all kinds of hell. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say looking back.
I've learned a lot in the past 4 years on the fertility aspect of it. The nitrogen part it's a moving target, and if you don't know how much rain you're going to get that winter, then you can definitely do that a little bit, or in the spring you can do that a little bit better. But putting that 70 units on it at Green Up, could I have went to 110? Yeah, probably. I mean, I had some proteins in the low 9s, even actually high 8s. And so I could have probably went up a little bit more on that. And so that was my first year doing it. So the next year, you know, I kind of progressed up a little bit, and we had less rain, and so my protein skyrocketed a little bit. And so it's kind of you know, you just got to play it by ear on that nitrogen application. Definitely, if you're producing barley mostly for breweries, do not do obviously a second shot of nitrogen late, you know, like we usually do in high producing wheat, because then you're going to get some proteins maybe in the 13s or 14s. I mean, that's what I've learned, is that it's more about not what you see on paper. You know, you need to use 80 units. It's the management of that 80 units, and when you put it on, that's something that's I've learned.
So y'all are single shot?
Yeah, both.
Single
I
shot?
think we both are.
Yeah.
But it's because of nitrogen.
When do you
It's
time
for,
that shot?
We're doing like late February, early March is when it ends up happening. But again, same as you would with wheat, just one single shot instead of splitting it.
The good thing about barley though is that since you're most of the time trying to put it in earlier, it comes off 2 weeks earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing double crop beans behind it, you know, 2 weeks on double crop beans, that's a pretty good amount of time where you can get some more yield out of those beans as well.
Yeah,
So that's a good advantage of doing barley.
Mhm. Yeah, speaking to the economics of it, a lot of times with wheat, you put in a little bit of a yield drag against your double crop beans, and we don't know exactly because it's a different field every year, but I would guess you probably, instead of that 15 bushel yield drag, it's probably closer to like 8, 10, something like that, because you can plant your double crops a week or two earlier. So for us, we have replaced our wheat with barley because barley makes us more money than wheat did.
It
And
still,
also, I
it still
like
is a
it.
luxury consumer though.
Mhm.
So on your P&K, you know, probably gonna have to go out there with another shot before you put those beans out. Just depends on how much you put out on the barley. I've been doing a 75, 60, 60. I mean, that's, you know, of course, lower producing ground, rented ground. Fertilizer went sky high as a cat's back this past year, so, you know, it's more of an economic decision.
Any other questions?
I got one quick one. Some of the rotate, I know you guys have only been doing this for about 4 years. You're planting after corn, you're planting after beans. If you look at it kind of a longer term, what are you thinking in terms of a longer term rotation on an individual piece of ground? Because you've mentioned, you know, you're paying bills with corn and soybeans, but what do you see you think is going to potentially work the best for you?
We'll keep doing what we're doing because we need to rotate corn and beans. That's what we do. That's our system. We cover crop every acre. You know, we've raised what we can. So it's kind of like it fits into this mold. So we basically have corn and beans that we alternate, and then we have 2 sets of roughly 300 acres that is small grain land. This is suitable for that. It's upper red land. So when one set comes out of corn, it'll go into now barley. It used to be wheat. The other set will get cover cropped, and then the next time I guess we plant barley, it'll be on the other set. So we're always corn and beans, and then there's 2 little groups that we have small grains on. But again, we benefit because of our size and where we are, and like we have changed some rotations around. You know, we doubled up beans a couple years just to get the correct amount of acres, and we cleared thin rows to make bigger fields. What everybody always does, but we have kind of structured ourselves to do it a certain way. So that's long term. That is our plan, is to rotate in that.
And same thing on mine. The reason why I have done more beans, I mean, I'd love to do more corn than I do, but on one hand, I'm trying to get the malt house started, so I'm trying to make sure that I have barley, at least viable barley coming in. So I've been doing the soybean barley rotation, and then sprinkling in corn where I can find other acres to put it on, and that's just, I'm no-till as well, so I can't go in and take the corn stubble and disc it in the ground, and I've had better luck with the dawn levels.
Do you have on-farm storage as well?
So this year I'm renting some bins, but storage is the main thing. I mean, the malt houses can probably attest. I mean, you know, they can't take but so much at one time. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. So having on-farm storage is definitely a big thing in the ability to blow some air on this stuff, because in June, it's hard to get it at even 13.5% sometimes. I mean, it's, like you said, you've only got that 2-day window to get out there and get this stuff. And, you know, sometimes it's sprinkling on you, so you got to.
But then it comes out of the field at 110 degrees too.
Yeah.
So you got to cool it down just with air flowing through it, or it will start, you know, molding until germination, etc.
Nate?
That they would go. That any size farm to around 300 acres, or get a farm that say grow more acreage than quality farming. Does that make sense?
They could totally grow more. It's more about how many combines you have access to, and how much trucking and bins. And so we basically have one combine that's set up to do small grains. So we'll push one combine over it, which previously with wheat didn't matter quite as much. It's like we're taking a big risk doubling our production up to 315. I don't know if weather works out, we're great. We're going to look really smart. But odds are some of that might catch a rain. We're hoping it doesn't ruin quality as much. But if you had access to 10 combines and hired it done in 15 trucks, yeah, you could harvest it all in a day.
Which some farms in Tennessee, you have that capability. Me, I have a 1981 International 1420 with a 15-foot head. So doing 40 acres is a pretty good job in itself. I'm the combine driver, I'm the truck driver, I'm the everything. So it just depends on the operation.
So any other questions before we kind of switch around? One thing I want to point out, and I think it was mentioned earlier, LeBron talking about one of the products he makes using Cory's barley. I think we use that as kind of a shining example, because you know Cory's not selling to LeBron, but that relationship and the fact that it's local helps LeBron sell that beer, right? So that was what you mentioned is the fastest selling beer you have, and so I think if you're in an area where there's a brewery not far from you and you can kind of complete that, the local consumers absolutely love it. They think it's really, really neat to have that. You know, I know who grew that barley that went into that beer, and so it's one of the things we talk a lot about when we talk about consumer preferences and kind of paying attention to that. If the consumer goes in and says, "Hey, I bought this beer and I'm supporting Cory and his family farm because I bought this beer," that's really neat, and the consumers love that. So we use that as a shining example a lot, but it is a good example. So if you're interested in growing, and there are some breweries close by, it wouldn't hurt at all to talk to them and say, "Hey, we're looking at doing this." And you can, I'm sure LeBron will let you use his case study as an example for
brewers using that in your marketing campaign. I grow watermelons and pumpkins too. And one of the stores that we sell watermelons to, when they've got a QR code, and they've got different growers on this QR code, and somebody shopping can shoot that, and then it'll show you a picture of getting your kids out of your field. And that goes back to what you're talking about. It makes the consumer feel better about overpaying for stuff.
Yeah.
I'll say. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are y'all doing
Well, I
anything
mean,
like that?
we're a relatively small brewery. I mean, we don't, future-wise, we will be leveraging that a lot more. One of the things we're actually gonna be doing is we're moving into doing a lot more canning. And our can art on our can is actually gonna be a picture of the barley growing. Right. You know, and we'll be able to do more things. But as far as our social media stuff, yeah, right out of the gate, I mean, we pushed it really hard because it's kind of an interesting story, even besides just the local thing, because I hadn't met Cory. I knew his grandfather and his father and uncle and everybody else when I was a young boy. And his grandfather put my dad to work when he went out on his own doing construction, cleaning fence rows and stuff like that to make more area to grow. So when I met Cory right when the brewery was opening up, and he said, "Hey, we grew some barley. Would you like to try to grow a beer or brew a beer with our barley?" I was like, "Heck yeah, let's do it." So when we told that story in social media, it's crazy the people that would come in that we'd never seen, and you go to ask them what they want, and they already knew what they wanted. You know,
we pay more for it.
Oh well,
that's the key.
I mean, we didn't pass that on. You know, it does just like I think Christian and Matt talked about. I mean, it does cost us more per pound to get that than we do on our cheaper malts, you know, the mass-produced stuff. We absorbed that. I mean, we didn't pass on. We sell that at the same price as we do, you know, our others. But when, like I said, we even named it. You know, we talked about the name. His farm, there's one red light in Hillsborough, and he said, well, the farm's just south of the red light, so our beer's called South of the Red Light. So when people come in, they ask the story behind the name, and we tell it. So that just keeps building more and more momentum. But yeah, it's our plan and if you guys come to the brewery today, we'll explain a little bit about what we're doing. But, you know, as we add, it's our intention that will be a mainstay beer for us. It's just the way our limitations with what we already have out, we just can only make it so much. But every time we put it on tap, our #1 seller becomes #2 seller.
To answer your question, all of our games built on your longer store. So the more that I have a relationship with the guy who grew it, the more content I have to then get out to our customers. So it's always good. I have a good relationship with Cory, but the other farmer that I get barley from, I've not even met him in person. I've only talked to him on the phone. It's really hard to get a hold of, but I can't then go tell his story. That's the advantage in trying to market that beer. So anytime we can get a picture of you and your kids in the field, that's great.
It varies by brewery, right? So like we use Wiseacre, for example. Wiseacre's in Memphis. They're still technically a craft brewery, but they're really, really large scale. And so their business model is distribution. So they're making pennies per can, right? So when their business model is pennies per can, they can't, you know, afford to really seek out these alternatives. Whereas it's a much better fit for Nate's brewery and for LeBron's brewery and stuff, where they can kind of take that hit, but it's driving traffic. It's those consumers coming in the door that they're looking for. So, anything else, Cory? Go ahead.
I'll say I've talked to about every brewery and distillery in the greater Knoxville area, and every time I mention to them about local barley and stuff, I mean, their eyes just, you know, open up, and they're like, man, when can you get me something? Like they all want to use it. It's definitely going to be a big thing, I believe.
To use your watermelon example, I had to say, you need to get it through your head. They're not overpaying for that watermelon. They like you. And then you think, you know, and your watermelon's far better than everybody. You know, so with the malt example, it was, you know, listen, we're growing a unique agricultural product. It is better. I'm going out there saying it. You need to say it too. I've got studies from Miller Coors supporting the idea that terroir does impact the flavor of beer, and then I've got regional, national, and worldwide beer quality medals to prove that Carolina terroir does taste good, and the medals are coming for Tennessee terroir.
I'm waiting on it.
But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, we're out there telling your story, but yeah, so like this May, I'm gonna bring a whole bunch of brewers out to one of my farmers' fields, and you'll be out there next to me saying that our barley is the best in the world. Because it's true.
I wanted to say one more thing. So I've had more experience on the secondary markets for barley. And so on the feed side, yes, we all know that barley is about 90%, I believe, efficient as corn. For feed quality. One that's been overlooked, I think, is the actual cover crop market. We've sold a lot of barley that, you know, just didn't get used because the malt house hasn't built yet. We've found cover crop markets. You know, guys are putting this stuff out for cover crops anyways, and so that's another market.
Yeah, same thing. We've done some cover. We cover crop our own stuff. We also sell barley and wheat both to be mixed by a local guy to then be sold as cover crop. And by us using our own barley, basically, like if you bought the same barley mixed, it was like $26 a bushel. You can grow it for the cost of, you know, basically like wheat. So even if you grow it and the whole malting thing doesn't work out for you, but you do some cover cropping or know somebody who does, there's a lot of difference between $6 and $26 that you can plug this stuff in and pretty easily cover your costs.